It's time to sit back, relax, and listen to Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life will inspire, motivate, and empower you. Live your best life now. Listen, learn, think, and decide. Change your attitude, change your life. And now, here's your host, Joan Herman.
Welcome to Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. I'm Joan Herman. Thanks for tuning in. Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life brings you interviews with some of the most inspirational and influential people in the world. It's our goal to educate and empower you so you can live your best life now. Thank you for taking time for yourself, and thank you for letting us be a part of your life. We have another great show for you today. Thousands of people have had near-death experiences, and they're usually dismissed as a dream or a hallucination. They're often considered by physicians to be impossible. One such physician, neurosurgeon Dr. Eben Alexander, had a near-death experience when part of his brain shut down completely, the result of being attacked by a rare illness. He was in a coma for 7 days when, according to Dr. Alexander, he traveled beyond this world into the deepest realms of superphysical existence. He's here today to share a remarkable story that changed his life. Dr. Alexander is the author of Proof of Heaven, a neurosurgeon's journey into the afterlife. Welcome, Dr. Alexander. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, Joan, thanks so much for having me on.
Doctor, as I said in the introduction, people are always looking for a way to explain a near-death experience, and often they're written off as someone who had a dream or possibly the result of drugs that were administered, and you were one of those people. So prior to what you experienced, what did you believe about NDEs and the people that shared their stories?
Well, before my coma, I was very much a reductive materialist. That's kind of our conventional form of science that basically says that the only stuff that exists is the material realm or the physical, and that we can explain all of the workings of reality through understanding the physical realm. Now, part of that, of course, includes the assumption that the physical brain creates consciousness. And consciousness, of course, by strict materialist scientists is looked upon as an epiphenomenon or an illusion, something that doesn't really have an existence in its own right. And I fully subscribe to that kind of thinking. I've been a neurosurgeon for more than 20 years, and even though modern neuroscience really admits to being fairly clueless on how consciousness could be created by the physical brain, they assume that the physical brain creates consciousness out of just the physical constituents. And a consequence of that is that none of us have free will, because that conventional science very proudly says that, the subatomic particles, atoms, molecules, cells of the brain are all following natural laws of physics, chemistry, and biology, and therefore there is no such thing as free will or consciousness. They would say the consciousness is just that illusory property. And of course, my coma journey showed me that that was absolutely wrong. And as do so many near-death experiences, they're really out there by the millions, although of course most people don't talk about them. And so this is where I think the whole world is shifting up, is the scientific understanding of the nature of reality and of existence based on a deeper understanding of consciousness itself and how it relates to the brain. And my coma journey showed me clearly that consciousness is fundamental.
Did you understand this immediately, doctor, or, as a scientist and everything you just explained, were you looking for an explanation? Were you dissecting everything you experienced and trying to come up with a logical reason as to why it happened?
When I first came back, it's important to point out my brain was so wrecked, as my doctors predicted. I mean, to this day, my doctors will tell you they have no explanation whatsoever for how I had a full and miraculous healing over about 8 weeks after my coma. But when I did come back, my brain was wrecked. In fact, all my language, all of my memories of life before coma, et cetera, every bit of that was gone. I mean, I did not even recognize my loved ones standing around the bedside when I was first starting to wake up after day 7 in coma. And words and language came back very rapidly over hours and days, and childhood memories and a lot of that back over a few weeks. And all of my knowledge of more than 20 years spent in academic neurosurgery, of all of science, came back over about 8 weeks. weeks. But it was initially, when I came back, all I knew was that coma journey and where I had been. And so there was this ongoing battle over the 8 weeks of recovery where my recovering neuroscience knowledge kept running headlong into this incredible experience I'd had, which really could not be explained away as a dream or hallucination because of the damage to my neocortex. My doctors knew full well from my neurologic exams and from my scans and lab values the severity of my meningoencephalitis. It was a diffuse destruction of my neocortex. That's the human part of the brain, the outer surface, and that's why meningitis is such a perfect model for human death. The only problem is almost nobody comes back from that kind of a severe case of meningitis to have any kind of story to tell, and that's why mine was just a deep mystery that was really very haunting. And so it took me years of processing to even begin to come to a reconciliation of all that, but I was very driven from the get-go to try and come to a worldview, a global understanding that would allow for all of my experience to go along with all my scientific knowledge.
So, Doctor, let's go through how you were able to learn all these lessons. First of all, when you died, we hear stories of people saying that they were on the table and they were able to look down at their body and see everything that was going on. Did you experience that?
Well, I never did, and it's part of my near-death experience that is so anomalous is the fact that I was amnesic for the life of Eben Alexander. I had absolutely no memories of my life before coma, and that's why when I say my words and language were gone, they were gone completely within the entire experience. I had no words or language, and so when I came back, when I was trying to write it all down over those first few weeks, what I was doing was putting to words the memories of this incredible ultra-reality I had experienced deep in coma and the multi-layers of it, all the traversing across higher and lower spiritual dimensions. I mean, it's a very complex world in some ways, although at the deepest levels it's pure oneness. And I was trying to put that into words, but, it's very difficult to use our earthly language that evolved to describe earthly events to describe these episodes where our consciousness is open full bore to infinite universal consciousness. We're completely outside of the illusion of here and now. And so it's a very challenging thing to put into any kind of meaningful words.
Doctor, did you have a guide? Was there someone who met you to bring you through this journey? And was it someone you knew? Was it a family member?
Well, that, of course, is kind of the crux of the story. Mm-hmm. Given my amnesia, and it took me a long time after my coma to even begin to glimpse why in the world that amnesia would be there. Why did I have that atypical feature? But I came to realize that some of the deepest lessons of my journey, and especially about the reality of it, were very much helped by the fact that I went in with an empty slate, that I had absolutely no preconceptions. All of my religious concepts and every bit of knowledge about being a human on Earth and this universe, etc., was deleted from my memory. And that fresh slate is what gave me the grounds on which to then later interpret and understand the journey in a way that allowed me to see the reality of it. So I think that was a very crucial part of it, was that amnesia. But what it did was it made it, as I pointed out in Proof of Heaven, a deep mystery was, why wasn't my father there? If I had scripted this, my father, that academic neurosurgeon who had a deep faith in God, he would have been there front and center. He had died 4 years before my coma, and if I had scripted it, he would have been right there, but he was not there. And in fact, I did have a guide, and it's that beautiful girl that I encountered on the butterfly wing. But the deepest mystery was I did not know who that beautiful woman was. I remember her now as perfectly as if this had all happened this morning. How she was dressed, how she was sitting, the warmth and love of her internal mental constructs that came to me telepathically. She never had to say a word, but she was my guide. And in fact, it wasn't until months after the coma journey that I finally had a revelation about who in the world she was. And that is kind of the shocking endpoint of the book Proof of Heaven. And I won't spoil it here for those who haven't read it, but that was the part that really helped me to start putting the pieces together and to understand the reality of the journey. But in fact, it had to be a much deeper mystery so that I would actually get the lesson.
Doctor, that was a question that I had going through my mind as you were speaking, because I was wondering if you thought that perhaps this was a different experience for you because you were going to be coming back, because it wasn't your time to go, rather than when it is someone's time? Do you think if I were to pass away, do you think my father or mother would be there to greet me?
Well, I think that we, as souls, what we encounter when we pass over is the soul that we need to see, or the souls that we need to see, to help us through that phase of the journey. Mm-hmm. And I think this is an important point. In the kind of skeptical discussion of these matters, some of the skeptics will say, well, how come all of the NDEs are different? And they point out all the differences. And I would say, well, the differences are there because, in fact, this is all about individual soul and soul group journeys. And so there are going to be very specific features that help people souls to kind of get what they need to get at that level in that part of the journey. So, yes, if that's important to your soul's journey and your soul group's journey, of course you will encounter your departed loved one, as you mentioned.
You were extremely ill when this happened, and as a neurosurgeon looking at it as a physician, is there even an explanation for your healing other than the fact that some type of miracle occurred here?
Well, I would say there is no explanation within Western medicine. This is why I've been asked to give more than 25 talks to medical groups over the last 3 years, medical and surgical groups, because they get this. They know when you go through the details of my scans and my neurologic exams and the lab values and everything else, that's not the kind of patient that ever comes back to, talk with anybody, tell any stories, or write any books, or give any talks, or anything. That kind of patient dies, or at best, they're in a nursing home, put away on chronic care in a persistent vegetative state. So the medical profession understands that there's really no explanation within Western medicine for my recovery. But when you study near-death experiences, what you find is that these miraculous healings happen. I think that's an important lesson for all of us, that all of us can have such miraculous healings, but we have to realize that all kind of illness and dis-ease at its fundamental core is a spiritual illness. And so it's always about lessons that we're here to learn from the challenges and hardships of illness and injury that help our souls to grow and our soul groups to advance. And if we realize that fully, then that opens the door for the power of prayer and for other forces from that spiritual realm to help in healing here on earth, but only if it's part of the higher plan for our soul and soul group evolution.
Doctor, you know the question that I'm going to ask now. Everyone has asked this question. Did you see God? Did he appear or she appear, or how did you understand God to be?
My experience completely shifted my view of God in a far more powerful and profound realization. I mean, my view of it all is that our very consciousness is a direct link to that infinitely healing, powerful, loving, and knowing deity at the core of all that is. What I found is that all of the great faiths, they all converge on this loving, powerful, omniscient presence at the core, and it's really in the kind of the dogma of the various religions that we tend to separate them out, but they're really in the deep essence when you don't kind of get locked up in the Tower of Babel and our human kind of defining and limiting way of dogmatically trying to address things. You realize that in fact they're all converging on a same very deep truth about the fundamental nature of consciousness of who we all are, and that God is the deity that I encountered there. That God loves Christians, Jews, Hindus, Buddhists, Muslims, atheists, skeptics. That God loves all. It's all converging into that compassionate, loving, caring, we're all in this oneness together.
Doctor, taking it out of the intellect for a moment, when you were in that presence, what did you feel like? Was there an energy? Was there an all-consuming love? What was the emotional response?
Well, the most powerful and dominant force by far was that unconditional love. And that is, the phrase unconditional love gets tossed around a lot, and of course it loses its meaning through being overused. But those who've had such experiences, not just near-death experiences, but any other glimpse beyond the veil that many people have had, a spontaneous awakening or epiphany, these are all the ways that we come to know the reality of that. And I also encourage people very strongly meditation. I go back, beginning about 2 years after my coma, I was getting deeply into meditation because I realized only by going deep into consciousness could I begin to understand my journey. And that's where a lot of my work has been done, to help develop tools to help other people go deep into meditation. And meditation is a way we can all come in touch with knowing that infinite power to heal that unconditional love brings to this world, and come to realize the power of bringing compassion, forgiveness, love, mercy, and acceptance into our lives by fully loving ourselves. And that allows us to fully love others, because that's really the only natural way for all of this to proceed. And that love is not only palpable, it's absolutely rock-solid concrete. It's the bedrock coin of that realm. It underlies every bit of our reality. And we can all come to know that. You don't have to wait till you die or almost die through meditation.
The book is Proof of Heaven, A Neurosurgeon's Journey into the Afterlife. If you would like to get more information about Dr. Alexander or his books or his work, you can visit his website, ebenalexander.com. That's E-B-E-N, ebenalexander.com. Dr. Alexander, in our final moments, what would you like to leave our listeners with?
I think the most important message is to remember you are far, far greater than just one little consciousness in a birth-to-death incarnation and nothing more. You are far greater than that and connected with all other consciousness throughout this universe, and are deeply loved by that infinitely powerful and knowing creative source, that God or deity is the core of all of it. And you can come to know this fully.
Dr. Alexander, thank you so much for being here with us today. This is truly an amazing story, and I'm so happy that you were here to tell it.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's a great joy, and hopefully we can talk again sometime soon.
We'll be right back.
Hi, this is Joan Herman, host of Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. Did you know that Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life has a free monthly digital magazine that can be read online or emailed to your inbox? Every month, nationally recognized leaders in their field provide information to educate, inspire, and motivate you. We believe in a holistic approach to life, incorporating mind, body, and spirit. Check out a copy of Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life 24/7. Visit cyacyl.com and be sure to tell your friends. Thank you for joining us today. We hope you found the show informative. At Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life, we believe that knowledge is power. Take what you've learned, apply it, and live your best life now. Remember that the information provided are the opinions of our guests and should never replace the advice of a professional who knows your personal situation. If you'd like more information, visit our website, cyacyl.com. That stands for Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. While on the site, listen to past shows on demand, read the digital magazine, and be sure to follow the show on Facebook and Twitter. Until next time, this is Joan Herman. Thanks for tuning in.